Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum, ladies and gentlemen. I welcome you here to another session of some of the thoughts which have been introduced by Ustaz Amin Ahsan Islahi in his exegesis of the Quran, which is called the Quran. We have been actually discussing some of his views regarding various verses of the Quran which have proven instrumental in solving some of the complexities in those verses. Today, what I've brought forward for your perusal is that there is a certain verse in the Quran in Surah Hamim Sajda, which is the 41st Surah of the Quran. And the verse that we are talking about is the 42nd verse, in fact, and it reads as La ya'tihi al-batilu min bayni yadayhi wala min khalfihi, which means that evil cannot penetrate into the Quran either from its front or from its behind. And it is here that Ustaz Amin Ahsan Islahi has explained that how this protection of the Quran from any sort of amalgamation, from any sort of intrusion of evil has been made by the was revealed to the Prophet 14 centuries ago. So, of course, it needs to be protected, it needs to be safeguarded right from the time that it was revealed till the time it has reached us, and of course, it's going to continue to the next generations. So the Almighty has made arrangements and elaborate arrangements that this Quran is not tampered with, it's not interpolated as was the case with some of the previous scriptures. And it is while explaining this verse that Ustaz Amin Ahsan Islahi has actually explained that there are 5 very important aspects that need to be understood while understanding how this verse, the claim which this verse makes that the Quran has been protected, has remained protected, and the words that it has used is that evil shall not penetrate into the text of the Quran either from behind it or from in front of it. So the first thing Ustaz Amin Ahsan Islahi has pointed out is that the Quran we know was revealed by the Almighty to the Prophet Muhammad. So the first thing which the Almighty did to protect this divine message was that He guarded the whole path from which the Quran was to descend from the heavens to the Prophet Muhammad. And we know that the jinn and evil spirits in normal times, they get a chance to intrude in the affairs of the of God when He is sending down His decisions and affairs. They try to eavesdrop and find out what is going on. And of course, they are not able to find out entirely what's going on. It's just that they get a piece of information and then add a lot of false things to it and then propagate it to people. So in the time of the whole path, which in normal circumstances, I mean the path from the Almighty or from the heavens to the earth, was guarded, and the Almighty says that these jinn and the evil spirits could not have intruded in this descent of the Quran. And in Surah Jinn, the impressions of the jinn folk themselves have been recorded and narrated, in which they said that the path which they are now surfing, they find themselves to be in a state of illusion. The path is protected. Previously, they were able to they were able to eavesdrop, but now it looks as if it has been guarded, and they don't know what good or bad is the Almighty has proposed for the inhabitants of the earth, but they do know that something big is to happen because that path is protected. And later on also we find in the surah, in some of the other surahs, that the jinn actually, a group of jinn actually listened to the Quran when the Prophet was reciting it, and they themselves professed faith, and then they went to their own jinn folk, to their own brethren, and talked to them that they have heard a wondrous Quran. Inna Samena Quran and Ajaba, that we have heard a majestic Quran. So the first point which Ustaz Amin Ahsan Islahi makes is that the path through which this, so to speak, this cavalcade would pass, the path through which the Quran would pass once it was to descend from the heavens to the earth, was fully safeguarded, was fully protected, as if guards were placed at every nook and corner that no one could intrude in and interfere with in any manner. The second thing which Ustaz Amin Ahsan Islahi has mentioned here is that the angel who was selected for this task to deliver the message from the heavens to the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam was one who was regarded to be extremely trustworthy. The words which the Quran has used is Samma Amin, and after describing many of his qualities, Zi Quwwatin inda zil arshi makin, that he is a person of might and power, he is endued with power. It is said that moreover he is faithful, he is trustworthy. Slightest of chances that the things which are consigned to him in any way could change, or they could alter, or he could alter, anyone else could alter. So the second arrangement which was made by the Almighty is that the angel which transported the Quran from the heavens to the earth was one who was extremely trustworthy, and there was not the slightest chance that anyone could snatch away any part of revelation from him, or intrude in any manner and take away part of that revelation. So this is the second thing which Ustaz Amin Ahsan Islahi has mentioned. Remember, the first is the path itself was guarded from evil spirits to intrude. And the second is that the person who was entrusted to bring down that wahi or divine revelation was the person of Gabriel alayhi salam, Jibreel alayhi salam. And he himself was one who was extremely trustworthy, and there cannot be any two opinions on the fact that any temperance could have taken place once he was consigned with a group of verses. And then the third aspect, ladies and gentlemen, what Ustaz Amin Ahsan Islahi has explained in his exegesis, is that the protection of the divine message, once it reached the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ from the divine, from the realm of the divine to this mundane world, the Almighty himself, and it was not left to people as was the case with some of the previous scriptures. So the Almighty in Surah Qiyamah actually said, Inna alayna jam'ahu wa Qur'ana, which means that it is my responsibility, it's our responsibility to gather all these installments which have descended in various periods of time. And then, Inna alayna jam'ahu wa Qur'ana, that it is not only my responsibility to gather all these different installments, but to read them out. فَإِذَا قَرَأْنَاهُ فَاتَّبِعْ قُرْآنَهُ. So it says that when we read out these installments, then it is the Prophet's responsibility to read that new reading. Once the whole Quran is collected and the Prophet and the Almighty reads it out through Gabriel, then the Prophet has to follow that final reading. And this is how it happened, that each year in the month of Ramadan, there would be a conference between Gabriel and Prophet Muhammad in which the Quran would be mutually discussed up to the time it was revealed until the Ramadan of every year. And in the last year of the Prophet, this was done twice. Once it is said that the Prophet read out the Quran to Gabriel, and in the second instance, Gabriel read out to the Prophet so that it could remain fully protected, and any changes in the arrangement or recital that were made should be fully gauged by the Prophet. So, and then it was consigned by the Prophet to his Sahaba, who were in such a vast number that there was no chance that if they memorized the Quran, then there would be any chance of any discrepancy, because such a large number of people memorized the Quran, parts of it. Some people memorized whole parts of it or complete Quran. Some people actually learned parts of it, but the net result was that the whole Quran was rendered safe, and it was also written. It was not only just memorized, it was also written, so that the arrangement and some of the words which could have been forgotten because of the similarity of sentences and verses, they could be actually done so, and this could be safeguarded as well. So the Quran was consigned to the living tradition of the Muslims, and it was done through by teaching, by instruction, by learning by heart, by writing it out, by actually hearing it out in various prayers, which were of course led by the Prophet in his times and some of the other Sahaba in their own territories. So in this very safe manner, the third aspect which Ustaz Amin Ahsan Islahi tells us is that it is in this manner the Quran was rendered absolutely safe, and the path which was adopted in this mundane world when the Quran was to be transmitted from the Prophet and his Sahaba companions to all of us, then this was the process which was adopted. The fourth aspect on which Ustaz Amin Ahsan Islahi has made his point is that the Quran itself is a unique book. Its eloquence is unmatched. it's unrivaled. It cannot be copied in any way. And if anyone does so, we immediately realize that it's a very, very bad copy. It's something so different from the words of the Quran that we can easily recognize any Arabic language, even if it is very eloquent. Thus, even the words of the Prophet, if we read them alongside the Quran and they occur in a paragraph without making that distinction, which parts are of the Prophet and which parts are from God in the form of the Quran, we will immediately realize the eloquence of the words of the Quran and they'll stand out. So the fourth point is the eloquence of the Quran makes it such a unique book that any addition which is made into it will always stand out. And we will always be able to tell that this is something which is exterior to it, it's extraneous to it and cannot be even part of the Quran. And this is something of a miracle of the eloquence of the Quran and its inimitability. The fifth and final thing which Ustaz Amin Ahsan Islahi has pointed out is that the language of the Quran has also been promised to be protected by the Almighty till the Day of Judgment. Now we know that some of the previous scriptures, we don't have their original language. We no longer have all of their original language with us. Parts of that language have been lost. In fact, in case almost all the original language has been lost, we just have translations. So in this particular case, the Quran has been preserved in the original language so that any translation, any interpretation can always be, and we can clearly see what the intent of the Almighty is and how a person is interpreting it, so we can match a translation to the original, and there is no chance of any evil creeping in through the element or through this path of the translation. So these are the 5 aspects which Ustaz Amin Ahsan Islahi has delineated in his tafsir. I do encourage you to pick it up. It's volume 7, also available in English. A translation of that from the website tadabburequran.org. You can go through this 42nd verse of the 41st surah, Surah Hamim As-Sajda. I'm just going to revise and in the form of bullet points these 5 aspects once again for your attention. The first is that the path through which the Quran was to be revealed was guarded. Second is that the person or the angel through which the Quran was to be transported was the person of Gabriel, about whom it was told by the Quran that he just cannot falter. He is a person who is trustworthy, and whatever is given to him would be consigned to the person he's asked to consign to in the same manner in which it was given to him. The third thing is, once the Quran was on this earth, once all of its parts had been revealed, the Almighty said that it is His responsibility to gather all these parts and then re-recite them in a new arrangement, and then the Prophet would be responsible for that new arrangement. And this promise which the Almighty had made was fulfilled through human means. He employed human beings, and the method that He adopted was that a very large chunk of the companions of the Prophet Muhammad learned the Quran by heart. They wrote it down, they taught it, they instructed it, and the Quran was passed to the living tradition of the Muslims of the times of the Sahaba. And ever since that process has been continuing, rendering the language of the Quran and the text of the Quran as absolutely safe. The fourth point that he has made is that the eloquence of the Quran is so miraculous, it's so spectacular, that anything, if it is added into the Quran, it will stand out, and we will easily be able to differentiate what the Quran is and what the Quran is not. And the fifth and final thing that he has said is that the language of the Quran has been preserved in the very way the Quran itself has been preserved, and this makes it absolutely easy to comprehend the fact that any translation which might deviate from the original text or which might not be a true representation of the original text could be checked as well. So here again we can see that language being guarded in its original form tells us that we know that the Quran that we have with us today is absolutely safe. So these are the 5 aspects which Ustaz has actually explained in his tafsir. I urge you to pick it up and go through it, because you'll find perhaps some new aspects as well in this, and hopefully inshallah it will boost your confidence and broaden your vision that when the Almighty has taken the responsibility of safeguarding the Quran, as has been said in another verse as well in the Quran, inna nahnu nazzalna zikra wa inna lahu lahafizun, that it is we who have revealed this zikr or this Quran, and we are the one who are going to guide it, to guard it and protect it. How efficiently and how precisely that promise has been fulfilled, the way Ustaz has narrated in this exegesis. أقول قولي هذا واستغفر الله لي ولكم ولسائر المسلمين والمسلمات.